My employee is extolling the virtues of carbon capture using this sequestration and storage facility. The general feeling is that it is inefficient and leaky to say the least, but maybe you have a better handle on it because you're a local. Would you be interested in your thoughts either way? Kind regards from Damon. And this is where they are taking the carbon out of the emissions from a oil refinery near the tar sands, the oil sands in Alberta's northeast. And I don't actually have a different perspective beyond as a local, because fact is I'm quite cynical about Alberta politicians as they face an energy transition away from the polluting crap that they peddle and throw some awesome Christmas parties with all the money they make. Greenwashing is a polite term. This is eco-terrorism in my mind. I'll tell you why. It's because the carbon they capture from refining oil is pumped into the ground 400 kilometers away. So it goes through a pipeline, or it's going to go through a pipeline for 400 kilometers. Why? Because they want to pump it into the ground so that we can get more oil out. There's a place where they think that if they can pump the carbon into the ground, it'll stay there, but it'll also go through a chemical process and pump oil out and extend this oil field for 25 more years. Great. That's just what the world needs.
Yeah, this has always been one of the things that's come up with carbon capture, particularly around here. We have a coal plant around here that does capture some carbon, but I think they do the same thing with some or all of that carbon, pump it in the ground in the hopes of getting out more oil.
So it's not something to celebrate, and it's not a virtuous cycle. Most climate and energy transition experts belittle carbon capture as a way for fossil fuel companies to continue burning things. And even though it adds costs to a declining industry that can't compete with modern forms of energy such as solar and wind as it is, it adds more costs and makes it more expensive. And I think it's hard to keep an eye on how and if the carbon is staying in the ground. I mean, there's an example here in Saskatchewan of a farmer 10 years ago or so. They had CO2 bubbling out of the ground. Experts said it's not the problem, but they lived there for generations and never had carbon bubbling out of the ground before, because we have a sequestration site here where we capture it from a coal plant and put it into the ground. And huge subsidies are coming from the government just to keep burning something they really love burning. So the government is often paying for a lot of this, or putting huge subsidies into it to protect jobs which could just transition to different kinds of energy jobs. There's no need for it. They're not going to compete with Saudi Arabia. Alberta's not going to be able to compete. It's already, things are crumbling around them as we speak. And who knows if this is the start of the end, because prices are down. There's another story on cbc.ca today talking about how prices are looking to be down for some time because it's getting easier to produce oil. And it's not easy to produce oil in Alberta, especially from the tar sands. Prices will one day collapse, and it'll even be more wasteful to put money into this approach, I think. The same money could be going to renewables and creating jobs. Why not? Most experts think that this is a limited role for carbon capture. Things like cement, perhaps. The manufacturing of cement, we have to decarbonize that. However, they're coming up with other solutions too for that may not even need carbon capture.
Yeah, embodying the carbon into cement is a thing that a process that people have come up with. So that's certainly better than pumping it into the ground to try and get more oil out.
So our listener who wrote in, his company is doing just that with nitrogen production in Alberta, which is maybe why he heard about it. However, that carbon they are capturing is used to extract more oil. So you're making nitrogen, but you're taking the emissions from the nitrogen and putting it into oil production, which doesn't exactly make the nitrogen green if it allows you to burn more oil. So there's no way that I'm happy with that. This is from the Narwhal.ca. That is a left-wing newspaper in Canada. Officials have decided a provincial environmental assessment will not be required of the $16 billion carbon capture plan, despite a request from the Athabasca First Nation landowners and environmental groups. The project aims to bury 10 to 12 megatons of carbon dioxide deep underground each year. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it, Brian? But it's not. In fact, it's roughly equivalent to the carbon pollution emitted by the oil sands alone every 6 weeks. So no environmental review for this. But if you want to throw up a solar panel and wind turbine, look out. There's oppressive regulations to keep you from even looking at that form of energy in Alberta. You can't even look at a wind turbine because it might ruin their view, so they're not going to let you put one up. And the renewable industry is greatly diminished there because of new regulations.
And with a cost of $16 billion for this, just imagine how many solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries
Or
you
two
could buy
NFL
with that.
stadiums. Two NFL
I mean,
stadiums.
you could power a very good portion of the province.
Of course you
So,
could. Of course you could, but no, that wouldn't burn oil, so we got to do something else. It makes no sense to me. It's just the way they talk has become more desperate, when they start doing things that we'll talk about later, and it's ridiculous. But yeah, there is some desperation, I think, now in oil country.
The Clean Energy Show